food is such an integral part of every home, every single home. My grandfather, father, and then me, even my uncle, they were all very passionate cooks.
Wow.
And that passion carried over to the kitchen. So my dadi never cooked, my nani never cooked, my mother never cooked, and my wife doesn't cook. And it's great fun because then we get a chance to experiment with what we're doing.
Welcome to another episode of Unbox with Tunvey, a podcast where we try and unravel human behavior through conversations with people who've lived unconventional lives, made some bold choices, and are committed to making an impact in this world. Today, I have with me a man of many paths. He's hailed as one of India's most influential F&B personalities. He's a celebrated author of multiple best-selling books. He's a liquor baron and the brand custodian of one of India's most loved drinks, Old Monk Rum. And he's founded Gourmet Passport, a fine dining app, and so much more. But beyond all of that, I think he's a gentleman. And anybody who's met him, interacted with him, says one thing, that he's a gem of a human being. And I'm so happy that I got an opportunity to meet and talk with Mr. Rocky Mohan.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for taking time out. I know you have a busy schedule and you're shooting back to back. But, you know, I'm very curious. One of the things I wanted to know was you're born into this business legacy, and maybe you've been asked this question many times. But was the transition into food an easy one for you?
So, thank you, number one. Thank you for having me on your wonderful show, Unbox by Tunvey. I think it's a brilliant initiative, and I'm glad to be part of all these celebrities that you've already interviewed.
Thank you so much.
And I hope I can justify my conversation with you. But your question, yes, I'll answer that. The transition, I didn't make a transition. What I did was actually when I obviously inherited the business in its true sense, having lost my father when I was barely 19 years old.
That's very young.
So it was an extremely impressionable age, and I was always asking myself this one question: this is my family legacy. What have I created on my own? So this need of mine, to satisfy that particular need, I branched out into food, per se, because of the fact that in the days I'm talking about, there were no restaurants of worth their while. You couldn't expose yourself to any good cuisine. And my business made me travel all over the country.
Yeah.
And having to travel all over the country, you get exposed to food of various cities, various towns.
One of the best parts of traveling,
that's
actually.
Right. And you had agents in every city who would make it a point to be very gracious hosts. And so food became a kind of a chronicle for me. So I used to note down recipes where I went from old people's homes and places like that.
Wow.
And I put it all together, and that's how I got into food. And then it just rolled on. I don't know what happened. I just rolled on.
But I think some of the best things in life are like that. You know, you follow a passion of sorts, and that passion takes you places where your logical mind couldn't have planned that journey. You know.
Correct. Absolutely right. I mean, for me, it's absolutely a very big surprise that I actually got into appreciating good food. But one thing I did do, I didn't become a jack of all trades. I tried to try and understand and master the Indian cuisine, where I think the wealth is immeasurable.
Yeah, and I think so many recipes are being lost, like even in every family. Forget culturally, there are so many friends I know, and even within our own family, we'll say, okay, you know, nani ka halwa or nani ka wo wala achar, and nobody remembers how,
correct,
you know, how it was made or what it was done. I remember my nani actually, she said, none of you kids have learnt anything that I make, and you're all so fond of it. she was unwell for a couple of months, and during her illness, she actually made it a point to write down all the recipes in a diary, and she put it in a suitcase where she had clothes set together for her last rites, and there was the diary with the family recipes put in.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, my journey is very similar to the one you've just spoken. So, in my family, fortunately, no women cook.
It is such an unusual, gender shift.
So in our case, the gender shift is because I think my grandfather, father, and then me, even my uncle, they were all very passionate cooks.
Wow.
And that passion carried over to the kitchen. So my dadi never cooked, my nani never cooked, my mother never cooked, and my wife doesn't cook.
Well, you've all chosen your spouses well, what can I say?
And they don't like going to the kitchen. And it's great fun because then we get a chance to experiment with what we're doing.
I have a small experience similar to that. So my husband's into catering, you know him. And I would see my mother planning these dinner parties and menus. And in our family, the women don't plan the menu. The men plan the menu. They don't cook, but they do plan the menu, So when there's a party and saying, what are we going to serve? And Sameer will say, leave it.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Fine. And now every time he asks, what do you want? I said, I've left it. You figure it out.
Well, his business actually dictates what he does. But, food is such an integral part of every home, every single home. Some homes carry forward a legacy. I'll tell you a small anecdote. There is a book of mine which I have written, actually documented, which is called Vazwan.
Yes.
It is the only book ever written in this country on Kashmiri Vazwan because nobody will give away that talent. I was having some Vaza food yesterday only, and the way these Vazas protect their recipes, it's like, it's
State
impossible.
Secrets.
So this particular Vaza, who came to Delhi in 1989 when the problem started off in Kashmir, I became a very good friend of his. I got to know him. And through that process, he ultimately was kind enough to give away his wealth.
Wow.
And he allowed me to document with a proviso that you have to cook every single dish yourself. Until you don't get it right, I won't let you document it.
That is
so
amazing.
I have spent time at their kitchen for 5 years in documenting those books to put together just 36 recipes. But that's what Indian food's legacy is. I wish more people would document that particular, every cuisine needs to be documented. I've now recently just completed a book on undivided Punjab, which I did during COVID. I experimented, I wrote to people in Pakistan, came to know about them, spoke to them, did a lot of work.
Yeah.
So it's the book is called Charda Punjab, Lenda Punjab, which is how we refer to Punjab, Charda being the Indian side and Lenda being the Pakistani side, is because as per the sun. And we're very excited about the whole thing, that book is now waiting to get itself published sometime at the end of this year.
Wow, excited about doing it because my dada, my paternal side is from Punjab on this side.
Right.
And my nana was from Lahore.
How fantastic is that? And Lahore is the home for good food.
Yeah, and I have some good friends in Lahore, who are big foodies.
Lahore, everybody is a foodie. I have unfortunately never been to Pakistan, but I would love to have gone. I still hope that I would go.
Yeah, I've been once. It was actually twice. One was a charity golf tournament in Lahore, and that time I think DLF we were doing some fundraising for the earthquake victims.
Okay.
And I just bumped into a few friends. Faria is one of them.
Yeah.
And
Faria Pervez.
Faria Rahman.
Okay.
And we ate lovely food at the Barud Khana. There's an old Haveli in the old town.
Yes, that is owned by that gentleman who does a lot of singing, Virasat songs.
Same family.
That's right, yes. Yes, one gets to know about them.
I want to ask you, you said that at 19 when you inherited the business, and this has been in my mind, that's why I'm asking you, At a very young age, you said that, this is the business given to me by my family, but what's my legacy going to be?
Yes.
And most people don't ask that question well into their 50s, maybe even later.
Yeah, I don't know, but it came to me. It came to me very early. And I think by the time I was 24, 25, I probably had established that let me try something new. Yes, I did dabble in a few unsuccessful businesses, but they never really took off.
I think that's the nature of business anyway.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like
and unfortunately had to give them up. And every time I didn't come away disappointed, I came away more charged to do something else. So.
Well, that kind of leads me to ask you that, when, and this is a question I ask myself as well. I come from a service family, got married into a business family, and tried my hand at multiple businesses. Some did well, some didn't do so well, but I could never adjust to the grind that a business brings, the
Correct.
everydayness of it, the hustle of it, the balance sheet of it,
Yes.
And now I run a consulting company, and I'm a self-employed professional, so to speak.
Correct.
And that's a space I can still live with. But I constantly wonder that when you're following a passion, your passion is food, and you've got multiple ventures, even Zilla Kebabpur running so many restaurants is not an easy business. I've seen my husband open restaurants, and
Much
he ran
before
many.
its time.
Yeah.
Much before its
And so
time.
when you're following a passion, how much is the passion an ingredient for the success, and how much of it is business sensibility?
So I'll tell you what, I mean, I as a businessman consider that every business must be allowed a gestation period. The balance sheet is irrelevant in the first few years. You don't look at the balance sheet.
So if you don't have the funds to run it for a few years, then don't start.
Touch it.
Yeah.
Don't touch it. It's not going to work. Because any business that does not have adequate funding will die a natural death. It's like without nourishment, nothing will happen.
Yeah.
And money is what makes businesses run, other than maybe consultancy, where you basically look at somebody else's watch to tell them their time.
Yeah.
But and get paid for it.
And get paid for
now, that's not a possibility in all businesses.
True.
But, looking at it purely from that point of view, I think the backbone of any good business is money.
Cash flow.
It's money.
Yeah.
So you need to find the right set of people. That's why, there's so much money floating around for angel capital. You got PE funds coming in and all the rest. And
Yeah.
these startups are paying huge dividends. Now the atmosphere has changed. They're all
So
getting
we're struggling a little
yeah.
bit.
But I think in the future, they will come back again and they give you adequate return. So if you invest in 10 businesses and 9 fail, that one will pay off everything else.
So even as an investor, you've got to play the odds. It's not really about putting money in one idea. If
Correct,
you
absolutely.
have to play the numbers.
Yes.
It's a volume game.
There was an education startup, and then there is fintech, and then there is service tech.
Yeah, and ed
and
tech.
all of them, yes, and all going through various stages of churn.
True. So when you write a book, and I ask, I have had a few authors on my show, and I think this is a question I ask for myself every time. I'm in the middle of my first book, and I struggle sometimes to keep or stay disciplined because it's such a lonely job. And the ideas are all there, it's there, but to have the discipline, and not just the discipline, I think the living in that bubble for an extended period of time to get the job done. How did you manage to do it, and multiple times over?
So what you are probably writing is more self-improvement and things to that effect. In my case, the challenge predominantly comes from not being in a bubble. You are constantly exposed.
Talking to people, meeting people.
Talking to people, understanding, and then authenticating or traditionalizing what you've got in your hand. Yeah. You could get a recipe which tastes brilliant, but it's not anywhere close to the tradition. It's been all, changed over a period of time. Now, how do you put your finger on that?
And figure out what's the original recipe.
So the process followed by me is very deliberate. I get a bunch of recipes of one particular kind of dish, and then my kitchen becomes my home.
And you're cooking.
I cook every single dish at least 10 to 12 times before I'll document it.
My God.
So it's a very, very trying process. One of the reasons, Tanvi, that I've had successful books, I mean, all four of them have done phenomenally well. I've had successful books because they work.
Yeah, because they're tried recipes, they're not cut, copy, pasted,
That's
and
right.
somebody said this is great, and yeah, it tastes very good, but you haven't made it. People don't sometimes make it themselves.
I find that's very unfair.
Yeah, if you're authoring a
get
cookbook.
people, you can pick up recipes for 20 places. I mean, I can give you an example where my books have been literally taken away by teaching academies. And you go and challenge them and tell them, listen, you've copied my book. And they turn around and say, no, I hear you mentioned ginger first, but we are saying put garlic first. So you don't have a copyright to be...
Oh God. Actually, copyright laws in our country are...
they're nowhere true anywhere in the world.
Yeah, that's true actually, but more so for us as well. I think IP as a vertical of law is still growing, and hopefully it'll have some muscle at some point in the future.
With AI?
Possibly not.
I mean, AI is the biggest plagiarism that's going on.
Yeah, that's true.
Virtually taking everything from everywhere and putting
make
it
a khichdi
together.
out of it and give it to you, saying new dish.
Yeah, it's all happening.
Yeah.
But I guess I mean, our kids and grandkids are equipped to handle it. We find it difficult, but I think they're very.
I think we have to learn to live with new technology. It's like people said, internet is a fad. I mean, like they'll be chewing their words now, but. Today the first thing you ask is there electricity, is there Wi-Fi?
That's right, absolutely.
Do you have Wi-Fi?
Yeah, absolutely.
You walk into a store, a shop, a restaurant.
Everywhere you're just asking for Wi-Fi. Absolutely right.
You mentioned Vazwan, and I'd read in one of your interviews that you literally became a student at the feet of the master and learned. And when you're an established person, you run a successful business, you've written books, and you're an authority on food in so many ways. How do you then go into student mode? And is that an important thing?
I'll tell you what, it was very humbling to see Ahad Paza doing what he was doing. I mean, it's a back-breaking exercise. Your husband knows that. Yeah. Catering and food is the most difficult business to be in. True. I mean, you've got chef feet, you've got bad backs, you have a huge amount of health problems with food, because it basically ultimately just ruins your life. Gives you very good money, but it ruins it.
It's very hectic.
Yeah. And it becomes actually obsessive. You tend to become very obsessive in what you're doing. So when I went with, having looked at that master, I was humbled by his style and dedication, and his 3 sons working with him.
Wow.
So I mean, yes, there was a sense of awe that they had about me being there. That Rocky Mohan is here. But I think I wiped that out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I became one of them. So we used to cook every weekend, every single weekend of the year for 5 years. And
every single weekend for 5
almost
years?
Every single weekend for 5. Do you know, to make one of those recipes correctly, to get his approval, I probably would have to have cooked that recipe at least 10, 15 times. And all he would do is just reject it. Aaj nahi bani.
No explanation.
And no explanation, kyun nahi bani.
So you just have to
You have to start all over again.
I know, right now the new movie is out, 12th fail, restart. Restart. You've lived that.
So I think student mode was easy.
Yeah, it was easy.
And then because it was giving and educating me so much.
I think when you have a great teacher, it becomes easy to become a student, I guess.
Probably. But he was a very
strict one.
Angry...
very angry, strict teacher.
Yes. Anyway, but I'm used to it because I was in a boarding school and I was up in Sanar. Okay. So I had a lot of interaction with strict as well as lenient teachers.
Yeah, I think most of us, at least up till our generation, we've all seen our fair share of very strict teachers.
Yes.
I think things are getting easier now for the younger lot.
I don't know.
Is it? Maybe
I
not.
still feel that what we think is easy for them, they
It's
find it
tougher.
tough.
Probably.
So, I mean, I'm exposed to 5 grandkids. So I get a lot of feedback from there. And, you get to understand, we have to do this. Miss so-and-so said this. Miss so-and-so said this. And there is a certain amount of respect and regard what they're getting back from their teachers.
So that's
Yeah.
a good thing, I guess.
So good to see that.
Yeah. You're dealing, like you said, you mentioned 5 grandkids, and you're dealing with all kinds of people from different walks of life and different age groups. What's the one thing that you see that warms your heart when you look at youngsters today?
Their sense of, in my grandkids, but I can't talk of generally, they and their friends, I find they have a great sense of understanding of the world. And they are not flippant about anything. They are very, very focused. And their focus comes much before then we learn to focus.
Yeah, I think our focuses came in the 20s, 30s.
Absolutely.
For some people, it still hasn't come.
No, but you get to see them, you talk to them.
Yeah, they're very aware.
I mean, they're so aware, they're so well spoken about it. They'll tell you the nuances of what they're saying and what they're not saying. So it's amazing, absolutely.
They've fleshed out their ideas. It's
Yeah,
not
and
just flippant
I'm
stuff.
in awe of them actually at times. I spend so much time with them
Yeah.
that talking to them on weekends, because weekdays is impossible to get time from them. And they don't have time.
Yeah, I know they have busier schedules than any of us. You've been called a great host by so many people, everywhere you read online, people who know you personally. Do you think hosting is a lost art? Because now I see very fancy events, but I don't know if I see the same kind of, and I'm not making a generalization. There are a lot of people who really go out of their way and make that effort. But when I look back to an older generation where everything was not easily, Swiggy, Zomatoable, there was like a whole level of effort that would go into making the dish or planning that event. Is it good that we have the convenience of being able to try various things, or do you think we're losing something out in the process?
So I'll tell you what, it's a very impersonal thing, catering. You can get the best caterer to come and cater for you. 9 out of 10 times, and this is most times, we seldom cater, unless and until the catering requires a skill set that we don't have. There are certain dishes, a skill set that we won't have to cook for 25, 30, 40 people at home. But catering to 5 to 10 people, 10 people on my dining table, we seat 14 on the dining table. So when we are eating that way, it's all home-cooked food. And it's a home service. And the best part is we like to serve most of the food ourselves. That gives you a chance to really interact with your guest, make them feel a part of being with you. It's not a party. I don't go to parties. I just principally do not
I
go.
avoid going to parties, but I can't say I don't go.
Yeah, I just don't go. I mean, last, I think, maybe 15, 20 years, I don't think I've been to a party. I refuse to go to a party because I find you are nothing else than better than a wallflower. Because the host and hostess don't have time to meet you. The other guests are too busy in doing what they're doing. So you are trying to find an inroad into an evening where you are part of many.
Yeah, you're trying to figure out, okay, which group should I stand in where I can have some semblance of a conversation.
So I find it very, very difficult. So I don't go to parties. Yes, the kids go to parties. I mean, my son, daughter-in-laws, they go regularly. But then that's their age to go to parties. They're going to meet new people. I have no urge to meet new people. And that's it. So I think I keep it as constraint, and catering is something I stay away from with due respect to your business, your husband's business. Once in a while, yes, we do cater when we want to have some speciality.
True, and
I
if it's
mean,
a very large number, then it also
yes, we've
becomes
had some
difficult.
fantastic chart from you guys. So, without saying.
You know, when like you said, you've started many businesses and some worked, some didn't work, and a life lived means multiple highs, multiple lows. What are some of the, or let's say, what's a challenge that you still look back on and say, okay, that made me, or that like gave me some great learning, or that was a pivotal moment?
The one business you mentioned, Zilla Kebabpur, for
Yeah.
example, it was a concept which I now look back and say to myself, long before its time. Had we put that business up 4, 5, 6 years ago,
With dark kitchens or whatever.
yes, absolutely, we would have had a rocking business. I think one of the first cloud kitchens in Delhi was set up by Zilla Kebabpur. And we were catering to 1, 2, 3, 4 outlets from this one kitchen. So we had a commissary from where we prepared everything, transported it to these places, and they would just convert and sell.
And people didn't understand the concept of dark kitchens back then.
That's right. Nobody really understood what was going on because the kitchen was not as elaborate as they expected it to be.
Dark kitchens never
Yeah.
are. It's
Yeah.
just that people expect the fancy restaurant to serve or
That's
deliver.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, I love to revisit that concept, but I don't think I have the
Energy.
energy to do it.
You know, we haven't spoken about Old Monk, and that's been part of your journey as well. And it's a very emotional brand in India. You know, there are very sort of big social, or people who take pride in the kind of alcohol they serve or drink will have Old Monk. Like in the army, a general will have an Old Monk, and a subedar will have Old Monk with equal passion. And I'm just wondering that, was there do you have any recollection of these conversations? Or was this something that was planned, or it was just, that's how it worked
So
out?
and I'm so glad you said what you did, and you gave the example yourself, exactly the army example.
And my father was in the army,
Yeah,
incidentally.
so, our association with the army is very deep. My father was an honorary colonel in the army. My chacha was a brigadier in the army of the territorial army. I myself have great contacts within the army. But about 22 years ago, maybe longer, maybe about 27, 28 years ago, we saw the onslaught of foreign companies coming to India.
Yeah.
And we saw that there was every business, alcoholic business, were flexing their muscles. So we invited an advertising agency, and slightly, give me 2 minutes, advertising
take your time.
agency, and we told them, listen, we want you to create a campaign for Old Monk, which we want to advertise across the country. So their first question to me was, who do we address the campaign to? So we thought about it and said, listen, wait, let's find out. So we hired a consultancy agency, a public research agency,
Got it.
and we told them, listen, go and interview people in this part of the world, this part of the country, this part of the country, and come back and tell us who's drinking what and what is going on. So to cut a long story short, they came back and said, listen, we don't have a target audience. So we were stumped, actually. And then we realized that actually it is the size of the bottle that determines who drinks it. So the general, as you gave an example, drank the full bottle, kept that on his bar. The white collar man drank the half, and the probably the driver of your house or your darban drank the quarter. But all three were drinking it, but they were drinking it in different sizes.
So it really,
So we just said, forget it.
who do you advertise for?
Yeah, so we said, forget it. And I think that was the cleverest thing we ever did. Because it became an emotion.
Yeah.
And it got carried across the country. You will not believe it, Tunvey. I, at an average, get at least 20 tags every day with Old Monk videos being sent to me.
And it's winter, so
And
they
I'm
increase in
just
winter.
wondering, where do people find this creativity? How does this brand give people this creativity? I mean, one gentleman is up in Ladakh and he's making an icicle out of old Monk. So he's taken some ice and he's pouring.
Like a chusky.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'm completely and utterly amazed that it's a very big emotion.
Yeah.
It's a great brand, and I think compliments to my father at that point of time to having created this product.
It's so amazing.
1954-55, and it's one of the longest selling brands and continues to be. It's the most recognizable brand you can have.
You can look at the bottle anywhere and people
Yeah.
have money plant going out of
That's
it. Every
right.
house you go to will have one Old Monk bottle with money plant growing
And
in it.
mostly in the army.
Mostly in the army.
Yes.
It's crazy, you know. And I think one of these big B schools should do a case study on it. You know, if you could bottle it and sell this success, it would be
We are approached
amazing.
by so many people to put the story of Old Monk together, to write about it. I am so... I don't think we should do that.
Yeah.
I think leave the mystery the way it is.
Yeah.
I think it invites a lot of conversation. It invites a lot of love.
Yeah.
And I think that's what works for the brand.
I think that's the emotion speaking, and I don't think you can really analyze the emotion. People just don't know. I think that's what happened to Coke and Pepsi, or well, happened to Coke when
Yes.
Pepsi came into the US, and there's a whole book written about it, the Coke story, the real story.
Yes.
And it's amazing how in blind tasting, people preferred Pepsi.
Pepsi.
So Coke got kind of anxious and said, okay, we should rework our formula. And it created havoc in the country because people identified with Coke as a brand. And the minute they said new Coke has come in, and they said, how can you do this for
Yes.
us? And people crossed state lines to hoard Coca-Cola at that point.
Yes, that reminds me of the incidents. There was this very senior journalist who was earlier a foreign service executive outside the country. So I was traveling in the UK, and one day he just sent me a message and said, listen, I'm doing an article on this weekend in one of the leading newspapers. I'd like your quote. So I said, listen, it's not possible for me to give you a quote from UK. In those days, one couldn't really, spend hours on the telephone. So I said, I'll be back at the end of the week. We can have a chat. But he was trigger happy, and he went ahead and wrote that article. And somewhere in that article, he led people to believe that Old Monk Rum is closing down.
Oh, that's when the whole rumor mongering happened about the companies in trouble and this, that, and the other.
Absolutely. And people started hoarding. People started buying 10 cases, 5 cases, and taking it away. And we had no clue what had happened.
Suddenly the sales are going up
And I called, the moment I got back, I called up that fellow and I said, what the hell did you
Yeah, there's fear saying, listen, let's just stock up for the next 10 years. You never know when I'm going to get my next Old Monk.
And they came up with all kinds of stuff. And the way he positioned it, he said, but I never said anything of the kind. I said, that's what people interpreted.
Yeah, that's
So now you pay the price for it. I had a great laugh and let it go on.
The rest is history. Yeah, and some interesting bottles have come out. And some really cool stuff has happened.
We keep trying upgrading the product, but nothing beats the original, as they say.
Yeah, that's true.
Like they say, black label is black label. You can keep doing green, blue, and whites.
So true, so true. What's your favorite food story? Like, is there something that you narrate often or you look back to frequently and say, wow, I had a blast doing that?
Not a blast, but I think I have a very fond memory of the incidents when one of the prime ministers of a foreign country came to India, and his ambassador was very well known to me. So the ambassador called me up, and I was traveling in Bombay. So my wife called me up and said, listen, these guys want to come home and have dinner with you tonight. So the prime minister of that country, the ambassador, and the whole contingent, and that prime minister had come to India for the Republic Day parade.
Oh, wow.
So he was like the prime minister of India's guest, and all protocol was broken, and the gentleman arrived at my home. But the whole task of cooking for him was the most taxing thing I've done in my life, because every single masala was taken away and tested. and returned to me sealed with the government seal on top to tell me
That
that you can use this masala.
So it's literally like if you didn't send the right ingredients out, there's no way you're able to finish the recipe because oh no, I forgot this bottle and it's not been tested. So, my God, what an interesting story.
Yeah, and
It's
we
amazing.
had security guards sitting in our bedroom because I had a big window overlooking my garden. Sitting. Never again.
What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self? Something that you've learned over the years and you wish or you could advise your younger version. What would you say you've learned?
My 20-year-old self would have loved to have done a lot different. And that advice has stayed with me, that I now feel that now that I'm almost semi-retired in the sense of living a life that I want to live, I want to go back to traveling, to seeing the world. And I was talking to my son the other day and I told him, I said, listen, I've got these lovely travel agencies that do these groups. And I'd love to travel with them and go and see various parts of the world which I haven't seen. And even if I've seen them more as a businessman than as a tourist. You go to a city where you're there for 2 days, you stay in a hotel, have a couple of dinners and you drive away. Like I used to tell everybody in Bombay that I don't know Bombay, but I've been to Bombay 400, 500 times. Because all you did was from Santa Cruz airport, you came to your hotel and you went back. Oh, yes, you never got to see anything around. So I think that's something I would have included in my life then. Because God was kind, I could afford it. But I guess somewhere along the line that missed out.
Yeah, I think at that point we're just so driven to achieve goals that everything else seems like a distraction. But I think I think you bring an important point, just to smell the roses along the way, that if you're going for a 2-day business trip, can you extend it by a day, just, laze around, look around, have fun. But it just seems like a luxury you can't afford at that point from a time point of view, so many times.
But now I afford that luxury. I only travel with family.
So nice.
And both my sons, their wives, their children, we all get onto a plane and go. We just came back from a holiday from Bombay. We spent 4 days there.
So nice.
So it's great fun spending time with grandkids. It's nothing unusual, but it's a great passion to put it all together. And I think that's what keeps me going. And we travel a lot together.
That's so nice. That's absolutely wonderful. Travel more. While you can, when you can.
Tunvey, it'll broaden your image, your horizons.
Like nothing
Travel
else.
is the most brilliant teacher.
Yeah, it's a great education. I do agree with you. Whether you backpack on a budget or luxury, it just doesn't matter. I think just the experience.
And it leaves an imprint.
It does.
Yeah.
Which no amount of, nobody can take that away from you.
And nothing from a book.
Yeah.
Nothing from a book.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it was wonderful. Before we finish, I'm going to ask you, my team's been telling me to include a rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you a couple of fun questions to keep my production team happy.
Okay. You're keeping them?
Yeah. And my editors. Yeah. So what's your dream food destination? Like if you could teleport to a place where you say, oh my God, this is like heaven for me.
So I've read a lot, but I haven't been there. I think San Sebastian.
Yeah.
That would be a place I'd like to go because I'm told their variety, their the amount of food, what the Spanish have done there, I'm told is absolutely amazing. But I can't really go because they depend a lot on seafood, and I'm allergic to seafood. So that kills that whole idea.
But the idea is exciting.
That's right.
If you were having a fantasy dinner party, who's the one person you'd love to invite or cook along with or learn from, in fact?
Oh boy. So I'd love to cook along with Thomas Keller.
Yeah?
I've dined with him, and I was at his French Laundry in Napa a few years ago, and I was fortunate that I got a place with no reservation. I managed to throw my weight around and got in, and most brilliant experience of food.
Wow.
I'd love to share the stove with him and see what he's doing, and what I can learn from him.
Well, we'll take a clipping of this and send this to him. If you had a foodie superpower, like, something that you don't really enjoy doing, but you could snap your finger and do, what would it be?
Snap my finger and do.
Shopping?
You know that. All right. Yes.
Oh, it was such a blast chatting with you. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
taking
much.
time out. It was absolutely amazing.
Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That's it on this episode of Unbox with Tunvey, and we'll catch you on another episode soon.